So I want you to imagine something with me for a second. Picture dining at, like, this incredibly lavish restaurant.
Right.
And you've been eating there your entire life,
Sounds pretty good, honestly.
right? I mean, the food just keeps coming. Your glass is literally never empty, and you've never once had to look at a menu that actually has prices on it. It's just this endless, effortless feast.
Yeah, a totally free ride.
Exactly. But then, right in the middle of your life, the waiter quietly walks over and places one of those little black leather folders on the table. The tab is due, and you have to ask yourself, what assets do you actually have left in your pockets to pay with?
Which is, I mean, that is a terrifying moment of realization for a lot of people because the currency required there isn't financial, right?
Right.
In this analogy, the restaurant is society, and the currency is your social capital. So that bill is demanding the depth of character and really the relational equity that you were supposedly building while you were sitting there consuming all those free meals.
And that structural shift, that intense change in how society evaluates us, is exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We are exploring the hidden mechanics of human relationships as we age.
Yeah, and we really want to understand the architecture of human connection, not just as some, warm, fuzzy abstraction, but as a tangible, measurable asset class.
Because it is. And we have to ask, why do social connections suddenly feel so incredibly fragile, so precarious when we hit our 40s and 50s? And later on, we're going to look at how a seemingly simple mechanism, which is the active circulation of gratitude, functions as the ultimate hedge against total isolation in our later years.
It's so fascinating because we are heavily conditioned by biology, by medicine, by just cultural anxiety in general, to view aging almost exclusively through a physical lens.
Oh, totally. We're looking at wrinkles and joint pain.
Right, exactly. We monitor our cardiovascular endurance or our skin elasticity. But the most dangerous aspect of aging isn't cellular degradation. It's actually this systemic, invisible shift in our social economy.
The social economy, I love that term for this.
Yeah, because our relational value undergoes a complete restructuring. And most people, honestly, are entirely unaware that the market dynamics have even changed until they are already socially bankrupt.
That blindness to the changing market is just sheer fascination to me. I mean, it fundamentally alters how you view, say, a simple Friday night invitation or just a casual conversation at a coffee shop.
It really does.
But to understand that shift, we kind of have to start with the baseline condition of our 20s and 30s, which the sources refer to as this phenomenon called the youth pass.
The youth pass. Yeah, this operates as the most valuable and simultaneously, I would argue, the most deceptive social privilege a human being ever holds.
Deceptive is the key word there.
Absolutely. Because when we are young, society grants us this unearned grace. People naturally gravitate toward youth. Biologically, evolutionarily, we are just wired to be drawn to vitality.
To that high energy, yeah.
Right, to the raw genetic promise of the young. And because of this built-in bias, the world is remarkably forgiving.
Well, the environment does a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah.
You mess up a major project at work when you're 24, and the cognitive framing from management is almost always, oh, they're green, it's a learning experience.
Exactly. They get a pass.
Or you act out, or say something slightly inappropriate at a dinner party, and people chalk it up to youthful exuberance.
Right. It's almost expected.
And the invitations to social events, the networking mixers, group trips, they just flow in almost automatically because they are dictated by the sheer momentum of, like, school cohorts and entry-level career environments.
Yeah.
You don't even have to engineer the
You
connection.
just have to show up.
Literally just be in the room.
And this right here is where the psychological trap springs shut. Because this influx of attention, this constant stream of forgiveness and inclusion, it happens so organically that it operates like background radiation.
You don't even notice it's there.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't perceive it as a temporary environmental condition. You internalize it. In psychology, we call this committing the fundamental attribution error.
Okay, wait, break that down for us. The fundamental attribution error. That's when you attribute external environmental factors to your own internal character, right?
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Yes. A 25-year-old looks at their bustling social calendar, their phone blowing up, and they think, wow, people surround me because I am a fundamentally fascinating, highly likable person.
I'm just so charismatic.
Right. They don't realize they're actually just riding the coattails of their own demographic.
They mistake a temporary, environmentally granted privilege for their own permanent inherent value.
Exactly. And this creates a completely baseless sense of security. They assume this social warmth, the fact that their phone is perpetually buzzing, that people are always willing to overlook their flakiness or unreliability, will simply remain the default state of their existence.
Forever.
Forever. It forms a psychological bubble, and within that bubble, they aren't actively building the cognitive and emotional muscles required to sustain long-term relationships. They are literally just coasting on the inertia of youth.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy because I feel like it's akin to being born a trust fund kid, right? But assuming you're a brilliant entrepreneur, just because there's always money in your checking,
Oh, that is a perfect way to look at it. Yes.
you're consuming the capital, but you have no idea how to actually generate revenue. Then suddenly, usually in your mid-40s, the trust fund is depleted, the lights flicker.
The waiter brings the check.
Yes, you have to generate your own power, and you don't even know where the fuse box is. But wait, let me ask you this. Is this just a superficial warning about losing our looks? Like, oh, we get wrinkles and people stop paying attention to this. Or is the source pointing to a much deeper atrophy of our actual social skills while we were coasting on those privileges?
It is absolutely the latter. The biological markers, the graying hair, the changing metabolism, those are merely surface indicators of a much deeper seismic change in how the social ecosystem processes your presence.
So the youth pass definitively expires.
It expires, and there is no formal announcement in the mail. If an individual hasn't utilized those decades of grace to expand their internal capacity, to build a robust character and emotional intelligence, they are suddenly stripped of that innate magnetic pull.
It paints a really stark picture of social atrophy.
Yeah.
I mean, it forces us to question what we're actually doing during those decades of grace.
Right, because if the environment is handing you friends and lovers and professional mentors on a silver platter, you never have to develop the granular skills required to initiate a cold connection.
You never learn the delicate diplomacy of repairing a ruptured relationship.
Or the vital skill of consistently adding measurable value to someone else's life. The muscles just waste away.
Use it or lose it.
Exactly. If you never have to work for a resource, the neural pathways dedicated to acquiring that resource literally prune themselves. So when the environmental momentum of youth stops, you are required to walk on your own 2 feet socially.
But you can't because of that atrophy. You don't know how to be comforting or fiercely reliable or genuinely inquisitive because previously you just had to, exist in the room to be assigned value.
Which introduces a massive structural shift in how we are evaluated. If youth is the trust fund, middle age is the open market. Society's criteria for why it allows us to take up space, why people choose to gather around us, fundamentally flips.
So how does that flip actually work? What is the new currency?
Well, the mechanics of this flip are rooted in how human beings assess risk and allocate their own limited social energy. In youth, society evaluates you based on potential.
Potential, what you might become.
Right. But in middle age and beyond, that speculative market closes entirely. Society evaluates you strictly on your track record and your character, what you have actually proven yourself to be.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like the difference between venture capital and value investing.
Oh, I like that. Expand on that.
Well, when you were 25, you were basically a seed stage startup. Your value is highly speculative. You might be the next visionary CEO or a brilliant artist or a deeply evolved community leader.
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
So people invest their social energy, their time, and their mentorship in you based on the sheer upside of that potential. They are buying futures.
And venture capitalists expect a very high failure rate.
Exactly.
They tolerate the missteps, the pivots, the unreliability because the hypothetical payout is so large. But when you hit 45 or 50, you're no longer a startup.
The future has arrived.
The future is here. You are now expected to be a blue-chip stock. The market demands quarterly earnings reports. The tolerance for speculation drops to 0.
So people are evaluating your concrete behavioral data now.
Yes. They're asking, how do you handle conflict? Do you keep your promises? Are you a net contributor to the emotional well-being of the group, or are you a tax on it?
Wow. Are you a tax in it? That is harsh, but so true. Because
Yeah.
it's like an unavoidable software update. If you insist on running the Youth 1.0 operating system, relying on potential in a middle-aged 2.0 environment that demands character and proof, your social life is going to crash.
It will completely crash, and the consequences of procrastinating self-improvement become vividly apparent here. Because the comfort of youth is so warm and intoxicating, people delay their inner growth.
They put off the difficult, ego-bruising work of building integrity and patience.
And empathy. They arrive in middle age still expecting the venture capital treatment. And when a 50-year-old operates with the entitlement of a 25-year-old expecting to be loved simply because they exist, it generates a massive friction.
It's like a temperature difference, right?
Yes, we can look at this as a kind of social thermodynamics. There is a severe temperature difference between their internal expectations of unearned warmth and the external reality of a society demanding proof of value.
In that temperature difference, that mismatch, is the exact birthplace of deep middle-aged loneliness.
It really is.
You walk outside expecting the balmy summer breeze of your 20s, and you are hit with a freezing winter reality where you actually need a coat. And that coat has to be woven entirely out of your own character.
And because of that temperature difference, people often misdiagnose the problem. They feel slighted. They think the world has grown cold, cynical, and mean.
They blame everyone else.
They blame the environment rather than recognizing that the evaluation algorithm has simply updated.
So how does this shift in societal evaluation physically manifest in our daily interactions? Like, give me a real-world scenario.
Okay, consider a scenario where a 30-year-old is chronically late to dinners, they dominate conversations with their own anxieties, and they frequently flake on weekend commitments.
We all know someone like that.
Right. Now, their peer group will often rationalize this behavior. They will say things like, oh, they're just finding themselves, or they have a really demanding job right now.
The cognitive load of excusing the behavior is offset by the affection for their potential.
Exactly. But now, run that exact same behavioral software in a 50-year-old.
Oh, man. The patience is just gone.
The social response is entirely punitive. The tolerance evaporates. Observers no longer see a diamond in the rough requiring a little pressure. They see a lump of coal that refused to crystallize.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
And the response isn't some dramatic, cinematic confrontation. People don't sit you down for a trial and say, we are evaluating your track record.
Right. They don't stage an intervention about your flakiness.
No, they just quietly update their internal ledger. They calculate the return on investment for their social energy, realize it's deep in the red, and they silently step away.
That quiet withdrawal is brutal. But, there's a flip side to this algorithm that I think is actually immensely liberating.
Liberating? How so?
Well, if we accept that middle-aged relationships are based on proof rather than potential, it strips away the uncontrollable variables. It means that from middle age onward, your relationships are entirely within your control.
Ah, yes. It restores absolute agency to the individual. That is very true.
Because in youth, your social standing is heavily dictated by the genetic lottery of your physical appearance, or the socioeconomic status of your parents, or even the sheer geographic accident of who was assigned to your freshman dorm.
Totally. But from middle age onward, your social wealth is a meritocracy. It is based entirely on the character you actively construct and the behavioral track record you deliberately compile.
You don't need to win the genetic lottery twice. You just need to execute on being a reliable, empathetic human being.
But the caveat there is the time horizon. You cannot cram for a character test the night before the exam.
Right. A track record, by definition, requires a history of consistent data points. If they're building that ledger today through thousands of microscopic daily interactions.
Which brings us to the granular mechanics of how isolation actually takes root, because it's rarely the result of a singular, catastrophic moral failure.
It's not like you committed some grand betrayal.
No. It is the culmination of tiny, seemingly insignificant habits that bankrupt our relationship accounts over time. And the sources point out that the most insidious of these is what we can identify as the declining habit.
Okay, let's dissect this declining habit, because it's where the philosophical concepts we've been discussing collide with the reality of, like, a random Tuesday night.
Exactly.
In youth, rejecting an invitation carries almost zero opportunity cost. You decline an invite to a noisy bar because you'd rather sleep, and it doesn't matter because the pipeline of social opportunities is just overflowing.
The network will offer you 3 more options tomorrow.
Yeah. But as cohorts age, the overall volume of that pipeline naturally constricts.
It does. It's a function of sociological settling. People pair off, they have children, they take on extremely demanding professional roles. The chaotic, highly randomized social energy of youth is reallocated into structured, high-priority nodes like family and career.
So the frequency of spontaneous invitations just plummets.
It plummets. And if you carry that cavalier habit of declining into this lower volume environment, you activate a silent mechanism of isolation.
Walk me through the psychological mechanics of that isolation mechanism. What is actually happening in the brain of the person extending the invitation when you repeatedly decline?
It's a process of cognitive efficiency. Human beings operate on heuristics, mental shortcuts to save energy.
Right.
If a friend invites you to dinner and you decline because you're tired, they accept it. But if you decline the next 3 invitations because you prefer the path of least resistance, like staying on your couch watching a streaming service, the friend's brain begins to optimize.
Optimize against you.
Yes, because sending an invitation requires emotional vulnerability. It is a request for connection that risks rejection. To protect themselves from continuous rejection and to save cognitive energy, they update their mental model of you.
The algorithm categorizes you as a dead node in the network. Like,
Yeah.
do not route energy here. The pathway is closed.
Exactly. They rationalize it. They say to themselves, they're too busy, or they aren't interested in this group anymore, or our connection has just thinned out, and then the invitations cease entirely.
Wow.
And it is crucial to recognize that this is not an act of malice. They aren't trying to punish you for staying home.
Right. They aren't mad at you.
No, it is a natural, highly logical social distancing. Isolation doesn't happen through a massive, dramatic falling out. It is constructed brick by brick through 1,000 tiny, mundane choices to prioritize momentary comfort over long-term connection.
So what does this all mean for the modern listener? Because I have to push back here a little bit.
Go for it.
Society constantly tells us today to protect our peace and set firm boundaries. Every digital platform, every pot psychology infographic tells us to say no to things that don't serve us, to prioritize extreme self-care. The word boundary is practically sacred in modern culture.
It really is. So how do we balance setting healthy boundaries for our mental health with the sources warning that saying no too often will accidentally build this inescapable fortress of isolation? Are we just weaponizing therapy speak to isolate ourselves?
That is the essential tension of modern adult life. And we frequently conflate two very different psychological tools. We confuse boundaries with barriers.
Boundaries versus barriers. Okay, break that down.
A boundary is a semi-permeable membrane. It is highly intentional and it requires active communication.
Okay.
If you say to a friend, I am way too exhausted from this work week to do a crowded Friday dinner, but I value you immensely and I really want to host you for coffee on Sunday morning, you have set a healthy boundary.
Because you offered a counterproposal.
Yes, you protected your baseline energy, but you actively maintained the structural integrity of the connection.
You didn't just shut the door, you pointed to a window.
Exactly. A barrier, on the other hand, is an impermeable wall.
Yeah.
The declining habit operates as a barrier. It is a lazy default no issued without a counteroffer. Like just saying, can't make it tonight, sorry.
Right. It is utilizing the language of self-care as a socially acceptable alibi for withdrawal. If you continuously use protecting your peace as an excuse to avoid the mild discomfort of maintaining your community, you aren't protecting your energy. You are systematically starving your social life to death.
So the no thanks with a full stop is the actual threat.
It is.
And once you've laid enough of those bricks, once the pipeline of invitations completely dries up and you look around at, say, 48, and realize the silence in your house is deafening, how do you reverse that entropy?
Well, reversing that entropy requires a realistic assessment of the physics involved. Overriding a track record of unavailability requires immense effort. You cannot rely on the shared history of your 20s to suddenly bridge a 5-year gap of silence.
You can't just pick up where you left off.
No. Rebuilding trust takes immensely more time and effort now than it did in youth. You cannot grandstand either.
What do you mean by grandstand?
Like organizing a massive, expensive group vacation to forcibly recreate the past. That will usually fail because the underlying foundation of daily trust has eroded.
Ah, I see. The key is not trying to desperately reclaim the past. You have to treat the repair like you are courting a complete stranger.
Yes.
You are building a new relationship that just happens to share some historical context.
Precisely. The required actions are microscopic, but they have to be highly consistent. It is taking a tiny first step to build a new relationship from today.
Like what?
Like sending a brief, highly specific message of gratitude out of the blue, or forwarding an article with a note saying, hey, this reminded me of our conversation from years ago.
Just a low-pressure ping on the radar.
Right, to signal that your node in the network is active again and that you are willing to assume the risk of initiating.
Which brings us to a massive paradigm shift. Because now that we understand how withdrawing leads to isolation, we have to pivot to the active posture required to thrive in middle age. We have to transition from the passive posture of being the one who is invited, the one who consumes the social energy, to the active posture of the initiator,
Yes, we have to develop the courage to become a giver.
the giver.
This requires us to understand the natural macroeconomic life cycle of social roles. Youth, by its very design, is a season of receiving. It's a season of resource accumulation.
You are a sponge.
You are a sponge, you consume educational resources, you get help navigating early career steps, you rely on the mentorship of senior colleagues, you are guided by absorbing the wisdom, patience, and often financial grace of older generations.
But a healthy ecosystem cannot sustain endless sponges.
Exactly. Eventually, you have to become the water. Middle age demands that you transition into a net exporter of value.
You have to become the giver.
Yes. You have to share your accumulated experiences with younger generations, extend professional leverage to younger cohorts, and offer your time and emotional stability to your peers. Cultivating this identity as a giver is the only verifiable method for generating deep, sustainable popularity and trust in your later years.
Because you cannot buy true social integration with a C-suite title or a massive stock portfolio.
No, you can't. When you are 60, the people in your life do not care about your historical resume.
They don't care that you were VP of marketing in 2018.
They do not care. They care about your emotional utility. Are you a source of stability and comfort, or are you an emotional tax? Do you facilitate connection, or do you merely consume it?
But the psychological roadblock here is massive for a lot of people. The concept of becoming a giver often triggers intense imposter syndrome.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources outline what we can call the perfect time fallacy. People look at their own messy, unresolved lives and think, I don't have $1 million to be a philanthropist. I don't have 20 hours a week to mentor at-risk youth.
Right. My own marriage is struggling. My career is plateauing.
What possible wisdom or value could I offer anyone else?
They are paralyzed by this illusion that there is a plateau of perfection they must reach before they are authorized to help others.
Like you have to be fully healed to hand out a Band-Aid.
Yes. They believe giving is a luxury reserved for those who have completely solved the equation of life. But the sources warn that waiting for a state of perfection is a trap because that plateau does not exist. That moment will never arrive.
Life is a state of perpetual beta testing.
It is. If you wait until you feel entirely unburdened and perfectly wise to offer support, you will take your potential for generosity to the grave.
It's the equivalent of waiting until you are an Olympic-level swimmer before you're willing to throw a life preserver to someone who is drowning.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
The sources are basically saying, you don't need to be perfect, you don't need flawless technique, you just need to throw the damn floaty.
Throw the floaty, yes. Redefining what giving actually entails is crucial here. It is not about grand sacrifices or writing massive checks.
Right.
It is about clumsy, imperfect, immediate actions. Sparing 5 minutes to truly listen to someone. Offering a tiny piece of advice based on a mistake you made. Or simply verbalizing a genuine thank you.
But this challenges our modern aesthetic of curated perfection so much. I mean, on platforms like LinkedIn or Instagram, we only broadcast polished triumphs. We're terrified of being perceived as incomplete or struggling.
Yeah, we are.
So elaborate on this for me. Why does acting clumsily, while still actively incomplete or struggling ourselves, actually build deeper trust than waiting to present a flawless, perfected version of oneself to the world?
Well, we can look at this through the lens of the pratfall effect in psychology.
The pratfall effect.
Yeah, it dictates that vulnerability and admitted clumsiness actually increase a person's likability and perceived trustworthiness. Perfection is deeply intimidating. It creates a hierarchy.
Oh, I see.
If you wait until you are a flawless, untouchable guru to offer advice, the person receiving the help feels a stark power imbalance. They feel diminished.
Like a charity case. And nobody wants to be the project of a perfect person. It triggers all their defenses.
Exactly. But if you offer help from a place of shared struggle, if you say, listen, I'm still navigating this myself, I make mistakes constantly, but here is one painful lesson I learned today that might save you some time, that vulnerability neutralizes the hierarchy.
You aren't offering charity, you are offering solidarity.
Yes. You are providing a map drawn from inside the maze rather than shouting directions from a helicopter. That raw authenticity is the most magnetic force in human relationships.
It's the courage to be seen as a work in progress while simultaneously holding a ladder for someone else.
Exactly.
But there is a vital counterweight to this entire philosophy of giving that the sources bring up. And I think it's fascinating because if we only focus on becoming givers, we miss the other half of the respiratory system of human connection.
You do.
We have to master the paradox of being an excellent receiver.
This is perhaps the most counterintuitive mechanic of all. A healthy relational ecosystem relies on reciprocal altruism. It requires a balanced, continuous circulation of giving and receiving.
Both are necessary.
Yes, if you develop a pathology around receiving, if you chronically deflect compliments, if you aggressively refuse help out of a distorted sense of false modesty or independence,
If you squirm when someone tries to just buy you a coffee.
you are actively throwing a wrench into the gears of that circulation. You disrupt the system.
And it's crazy because we often dress up that refusal as a virtue.
Oh, all the time.
We frame it as being low maintenance. We say things like, oh, please don't trouble yourself, or I've got it handled, I don't need anything. We view ourselves as the stoic, independent hero who never burdens the tribe.
But we fail to calculate the psychological impact on the other person, the person attempting to give. When someone offers you a compliment, a favor, or a gift, they are extending a piece of their own agency. They are attempting to enact their own role as a giver, to feel useful and connected to you.
And when you swat that away with performative modesty,
You are effectively rejecting their contribution to the ecosystem. By constantly showing hesitation or over-apologizing or refusing to let them pay the tab, you are signaling that their offering is unwanted.
you make the person offering kindness feel useless.
You deny them the neurological reward of altruism. You make them feel entirely useless. And over time, that constant friction actually thins out the structural integrity of the relationship.
Because they learn that trying to connect with you is an exhausting, uphill battle against your own ego.
So they simply stop trying. You must learn to simply accept with a bright, honest thank you, even if you feel internal reservation.
Which brings up a great question. We usually think of giving and receiving as total opposites, like inhaling and exhaling. But it sounds like the sources are suggesting they're actually the exact same social muscle. Like, if you're deeply uncomfortable receiving, it poisons your ability to give. How does swallowing our pride to accept a compliment actually train us to be better mentors down the line?
It's all about the compounding effect of receiving. The sources detail this profound insight. Individuals who possess a rich history of comfortably, graciously receiving kindness in their past actually construct the strongest foundation to become natural, effortless givers in their future.
Because they have studied the transaction from the inside out.
Yes, they know the profound warmth of being helped without being made to feel guilty. So when it is their turn to extend the ladder, they don't attach strings to it.
They don't make it awkward or transactional because they understand the pure joy of the exchange.
Exactly. Conversely, if you spend decades defensively blocking people's attempts to assist you, you subconsciously encode the exchange of favors as a burden, or a debt, or a power struggle.
Wow. So when you eventually try to give,
Yeah.
your actions will be tainted by that anxiety.
You will give with hesitation, or with an unspoken expectation of immediate repayment. To become a graceful giver, you must first subject yourself to the vulnerability of being a graceful receiver.
The mandate, then, is to ruthlessly eliminate the phrase, you shouldn't have, from our vocabulary.
Oh, no.
We have to learn to absorb the discomfort of being helped, look the person in the eye, and simply say, thank you, I really needed this.
Yes.
Which bridges perfectly to the ultimate actionable takeaway we can extract from this analysis.
The one-year challenge.
Yes, the one-year gratitude challenge. Let's talk about this because it functions as a daily, systematic rewiring of our social circuitry.
It does. And the challenge is aggressively simple in theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. It challenges the listener to consciously, deliberately use the words thank you every single day for one full year.
Not just as a throwaway pleasantry, right?
No, as a focus tool for relationship building, because we chronically substitute gratitude with apologies or dismissal.
He'll give me an example of that.
Well, we say, sorry I'm rambling, instead of thank you for listening to me.
Oh, wow, I do that all the time.
Most people do. Or we say, no problem, instead of thank you for trusting me with this. By consciously deploying gratitude, you are actively participating in the circulation of social capital.
And the philosophical anchor for this challenge from the source material is this realization that today is the youngest day of the rest of your life.
Exactly.
The youth past may be long gone. The speculative market of your 20s may be permanently closed. But relatively speaking, your time horizon to build a track record of character will never be longer than it is right at this exact second. How you use it today dictates your future assets.
Every deployment of gratitude, every clumsy attempt to help a colleague, every time you swallow your pride and graciously accept a favor,
Ah.
you are depositing a measurable unit of trust into your long-term social portfolio.
And by this time next year, you could possess 365 new data points, proving to your network that you are a reliable, deeply connected node.
That is 365 investments into your future.
So let's synthesize the massive terrain we've covered today in this deep dive. We started by dismantling the illusion of the youth pass, that dangerous, environmentally granted privilege that tricks us into believing our social worth is inherent and permanent.
Which leads to a catastrophic atrophy of our relationship skills.
Right. And then we navigated the harsh thermodynamic reality of the midlife market correction, that moment where society stops investing in our speculative potential and begins ruthlessly evaluating the empirical data of our character.
We mapped the quiet, algorithmic mechanics of isolation, discovering how the lazy, declining habit and the weaponization of boundaries build inescapable fortresses around us.
And we found the antidote in the courage to become clumsy, imperfect givers, offering solidarity rather than flawless charity.
The overarching thesis is absolute here. Human connections are the ultimate, irreplaceable asset. You can optimize your career, you can amass immense financial wealth, and you can construct the most pristine, impermeable boundaries imaginable.
But without a robust network of humans to share that reality with, the value of those material gains undergoes hyperinflation. They drop by more than half. They become meaningless.
It's like hoarding $1 billion in a currency that no one on Earth accepts. The wealth is there, but you are effectively starving.
So as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering thought. It's something to mull over on your own, and it builds on the profound paradox we just uncovered. The idea that the capacity to give is actually forged in the fires of graciously receiving.
It's a powerful thought.
If our ability to extend grace to others is truly dependent on our past experiences of absorbing it, then perhaps the most profound act of generosity you can perform today isn't actually offering to carry someone else's burden. Perhaps true, radical generosity is swallowing your fiercely protected pride and allowing others the grace of helping you. By letting a friend assist you today, by accepting a compliment without deflecting it, by allowing someone else to pay the tab, are you actually providing them with the necessary repetitions to become the generous elders of tomorrow?
You are training them.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And conversely, by stubbornly insisting on doing everything yourself, by keeping your walls impossibly high and your ledger perfectly balanced, who are you robbing of their own necessary growth?
It really forces us to realize that we don't just need each other for survival. We need each other as the very proving ground for our own humanity.
So the next time the waiter walks over and places that leather folder on the table, maybe don't fight so hard to pay it. Let your friend treat you. Just look them in the eye and say thank you. You might just be saving both of your lives.